Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Red Eye podcast, Confessions from the Cabin. Today I'm joined by Alex Chisnall. Hi, Alex.
Hey, how you doing, Ali?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you so much for coming on today. You flew long haul back in the 90s, didn't you? When did you start flying?
90s and the noughties. 94, preceded by a little season with Air Tours that got me into the industry, and finished up by taking voluntary redundancy in 2009 on the 9th of the 9th of the 9th.
Oh, well, that's just poetry right there. Would you say, I've been speaking to a lot of people recently, and I myself flew in the noughties. Do you think it was a more fun time back then?
From speaking to friends who are crew now, I don't know. It's difficult, isn't it? Is it through rose-tinted glasses, or because everybody I know flies now? Because my wife Carly, who was also crew with Virgin for 13, 14 years, she's always talking about going back, and all of her friends who still work there are like, "Oh my god, don't do it. You know, it's hard. It's much harder work. You get less time at the destinations." And it's funny having left and set up a number of my own businesses. I can see it from the business perspective as well. It's like, well, yeah, if you can get lower your costs, increase the productivity, why wouldn't you do it? But with my you know old cabin crew head on, yeah, those days were, I've got the best memories, I have to say, and met the best people, went to the best places, so I loved it, and I'd recommend it for anybody to do it as part of their career.
Oh, for sure. I think you learn so much as being crew, just life skills that I never would have got if I hadn't flung myself around the world tired with a bunch of people I didn't know
Yeah,
all those years. I think with the 90s and the noughties, there was less rules. The flights were a bit more concentrating on their brand and concentrating on their notoriousness, if that's a word, and trying to just get themselves out there as being a fun and the people that want to fly with. And nowadays, like you say, companies are run to make money. So they have to kind of cut the crew and cut the services and cut the amount of fun we have.
yeah, there definitely were rules though. I remember getting hauled before a disciplinary commission in my first year at Virgin with a couple of one other character, and
Well done.
we when we lost I got refused promotion, and had my concessions taken away for a year as well. So there definitely definitely were rules,
What
but
did you do?
oh god, I can't
Can you
even.
tell us?
I could, but you could probably edit this out if you think it's in bad taste or whatever. Maybe.
Okay.
Oh my god, we did this trip to San Francisco, and we did like the wine tour, um, to Napa Valley, and just had a ridiculously fun trip. And there were a lot of male crew on the trip. I think because I'm pretty sure we'd all requested it. I mean, how else would we all have ended up together? But there must have been six of us or something like that. Quite seniors, juniors, etc. And I don't think whoever the FSM was at the time quite knew how to deal with it. There's lots of practical jokes being played and stuff like that. And I just remember on the way home, um, we'd stitched up a couple of the demo kits so that when the life jacket was opened in front of the passenger, somebody with a black marker pen had drawn a pair of boobs, shall we say, on said life
Oh, I
jacket.
love it.
Um, I'm sure it actually said on there "nice tits" as well, but we were told like the FSM then like switched all the positions around, but and it had a big talk with us before we then started the first service, moved us all around, separated us, different positions and stuff like that on the plane. And then she was like, I'm phoning the head office or whatever we did back then. I'm sure there wasn't a phone call, but was there a fax machine in the flight deck or something like that? Some little
Yeah, I
messaging
think there
tool.
still is. Yeah.
Yeah, still is. And messaged to Gatwick or Heathrow for the aircraft to be met by like I can't even remember now. Head of cabin crew safety or whatever, and one of the other crew was just like, "Don't worry about it. I'll sort it. I'll get somebody to who I know in the department just to bring some, new life jackets. We'll replace them. No one will be the wiser. It's just a bit of, high japes on the way home from like a absolutely amazing trip." And she wouldn't have it. She wouldn't have it. I was going to deny everything, and it had nothing to do with it. And unfortunately, another crew member admitted it and also said I was part of it as well. So I got dragged in to the disciplinary, and yeah, that was it. I remember being declined promotion for like 6 months and no concessions for 6 months as well. So it was a
That's
bit of a blow at
painful.
the time.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. How old were you when you started flying for Virgin?
12 by the sound of it. 24, double it.
24.
Uh,
Oh, well, see, your frontal cortex hadn't formed by then. What were you
exactly.
expected to do?
There you go. What was I supposed to do?
There was a story you told me that I found amazing. And I think you were 24 then. I think you'd only just started flying for the airline when there was a bout of food poisoning amongst the pilots. Can you tell that story?
Oh my god! I think that out of all I had literally everything happen to me on an aircraft, from like engine fire, galley oven fire, diversions, air rage. I like everything happened to me, medical emergencies, you name it. But I still think that one of pilots getting sick, even had a pilot being, was it Washington? Someone come on and actually take the pilot off the plane and breathalyze them. I thought that one made the papers as well.
I
But
remember that one, yeah.
yeah, I remember that. I think now that was we were waiting to get on the plane. It was that yeah, that was it. So it wasn't my flight, but we were seeing it all go on in the flight being delayed and what have you while they got another pilot. But yeah, the story with me, and I remember it was 747 and it must have been a 200 because it must have been like 94 or 95. I'd literally been there a year or so because I was still a junior. And all I remember being way down the back of the 747 was the purser at the time getting a phone call from the front of the plane from the FSM saying, I won't mention their name for obvious reasons, the pilot, but the captain has asked for Alex to go and join him in the flight deck because one of the other pilots is ill. And because this was on the way home as well, people have gotten to know each other a little bit better. And the purser at the time had said, "Oh, one of the girls has got their private pilot's license. She'd probably be more suitable than Alex." And it's like, no, we want Alex. And I'm pretty sure I was the only male crew on that flight. And I remember going up there, and it was actually worse than what I was kind of led to believe. In that, when I went up there, and the captain said to me, "Okay, two other pilots have both gone down with food poisoning, and I need somebody else in here with me to monitor me and monitor, the instruments. And then if neither of the pilots are still up to it, to read the landing checks." At that point, I literally panicked, in my mind, literally going, I don't even know how to pour a cup of tea, let alone do the landing checks. I've only been here, I can't remember how many months. It's definitely year one or year one and a bit. And I definitely didn't take to cabin crew life as quickly as some people. I didn't. I just, for whatever reason. So I remember then actually saying to him, I think Anna or whatever her name was at the time, and I wonder who it is now. Remember who that was, and if they remember this as well. But I remember saying why don't I go and get Anna instead? She actually flies. She's got a private pilot's license. She flies. He's like, no, you're the man for the job. I was kind of thinking, really? I'm the only other man on the plane out of the crew. Surely you're better off, with her. But it's like he's the captain. It was in the '90s. He's telling me what to do.
Mm.
I'm just a 24-year-old junior, so I'm just really like, yes, okay. And I remember it was a long haul flight, and I remember through the night. I just remember it being pitch black, being sat there, and literally, not being able to see anything except darkness out there with just the lights flashing on the plane and the lights in the cabin. And then at some point, the captain turning to me and going, "Right, I've just got to go to the toilet," and me just thinking, "What? You're leaving me, this idiot, on his own in the cockpit of a 747 with 300 passengers?" And obviously, there's things called autopilot and all the rest of it, and navigation and putting the flight plan in. But you know,
He must have really needed to go.
and he wasn't gone for just a minute or two, shall we say? He was
Oh,
gone
well, then
for.
yes, he did.
He definitely needed to go, and times like that just seem to stretch and go on forever. And typically, while I've been sat in there with him, to my recollection, there hadn't been much communication. But literally, as soon as he was gone, messages started coming in with what sounded like to me Russian or Eastern European voices, like going, Virgin Delta Bravo, please come in. What's your position? Virgin Delta Bravo. I'm just literally going like, what am I meant to do?
Oh,
What am I
no.
meant to do? I'm literally looking around, and I didn't even know how to like phone any of the other crews down the other end of the air. I'm like looking, how do I get hold of anybody?
Well, yeah. And like you
Um,
worry that they'll think that, oh, maybe their plane's been hijacked because they're not answering and they're supposed to answer within this time and don't shoot them down.
exactly. Yeah,
It's just,
yeah. Well, then
oh,
I
no.
don't know. You see stories, read stories, since of fighter jets pulling alongside, don't you? When they're, as you
Oh,
say, when they
yeah.
don't know. When they don't know if there's anybody in charge or whether it's been taken over by terrorists or something. And this obviously predates 9/11 and that situation. But yeah, it was, I guess, kind of looking back, it was quite an anxious wait for me till
Yeah.
the pilot said captain arrived. And I don't recollect anything else other than then having to do the landing checks because the other two pilots still hadn't come
I
back to
mean,
life, shall we say.
thank goodness the captain didn't get that sick. I mean, I'm going to guess he was a little bit sick because he sounds like he went to the toilet for a while. But God,
Yeah.
can you imagine if you had to land the whole? I mean, that must have happened,
And the
surely,
funny
in the
thing
whole
was,
of
I do,
aviation.
I do remember him saying to me, "Don't tell anybody about this. This never
Yeah.
happened." And then
Wink. That's why he
before,
needed a boy. Needed a boys' club,
yeah, and
men's
and
honor.
and I kind of have this recollection of doing the landing checks, and then another pilot getting in there in my seat for taxiing off, and then being in view of
Oh
the
my
gate and all the
gosh.
rest of it.
And the passengers never knew.
The passengers never knew.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you've had fires on planes. I mean, that's one thing I've not had, thankfully, Doctor.
Yeah, and yeah, I remember flying to Washington, and I remember being some way across the Atlantic when lost an engine, and then they go, you're into that decision mode. How far, is it quicker to turn back or is it quicker to carry on?
Mm,
And also have had oven fire, galley fires on board as well. A couple of those I remember over the years
uh,
as well. Just your training kicking in and opening the door of the oven a quarter of an inch, firing the BCF. So I can still remember it. I finished in
yeah.
2009.
It's ingrained in you.
Yeah, it is.
Gosh.
It is.
When I was talking to you a few weeks back about restraints because we had a restraint story at the beginning in the first month of our podcast, and you
Mm.
said, in fact, you were on the flight randomly. It wasn't you that I spoke to, but you were on the celebrity restraint story,
Yes.
which I thought was very interesting. But you said you've had an even worse one, haven't you? Of like I mentioned in that podcast that I just dreaded the fact that one day maybe I'd need to restrain like a 250-pound guy, but you You had to, right?
Yeah, and I mean the celebrity one was a female, and I can't remember what rank I was when that happened, whether I was a senior or whether I was CSS at the front. Pretty sure I wasn't FSM, but I just remember from that one, and you said the person who told the story didn't articulate this, but I distinctly remember. I think I was CSS because I got someone else to sit in. That we got had to put a blanket around her, like trying to fit a blanket around the hat racks because she was in the second section of upper class, just behind the galley there, and having
Hmm.
put a blanket around there because she was spitting and she was barking like a dog. She was literally just going like, like this.
Oh my
I'd never seen
gosh.
anything like it before or since. But we'd found these tablets with her name on that she'd taken that day, and we'd found her first at the bar necking a bottle of champagne and then a bottle of vodka. So, yeah, you've had that one had its story told, but the one I had myself, and again, I won't say the name. People probably work out who it is if they ever knew me at Virgin Atlantic. But myself and a friend of mine were both CSSs on the flight, and this passenger was basically one of those ones who was concealing a drink, like drinking out of their own duty free. Then they tried to smoke cigarette on the flight, and I remember they were literally the last row of economy, I think, down the back of the Airbus A340. And I remember crew member Jill, I can remember her name, coming into the galley. Pretty sure we're coming back from it was Washington. Washington seems to resonate with me all the time.
Yeah. What's up
Um,
with Washington?
yeah, and I just remember coming into the galley, being massively upset, and he'd this guy had punched her in the face, and as we found out later, back at base, he'd actually broken her nose by punching her in the face. And I can't remember how, but I remember the FSM coming down the front. We just thought we need to get him out of his seat. I remember the other passengers either side of him moving out of the way, and somehow, and I can't remember how, enticing him out of his seat into the galley area because we'd already decided that we were gonna restrain him. So we'd got everything ready in the back galley. I can remember it all being laid out on the galley surfaces, enticing him out and trying to talk to him. And next thing I knew, he'd got my friend in a headlock. He'd got both of them in a headlock. That was it. He got the FSM and the CSS in a headlock, and he was right by the door. What's it going to be? R5 on the Airbus there. And there's me, and behind them watching it all, going, what the hell am I going to do now? And the guys are just kind of like laughing and kind of playing around with it and just thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do now? All the passengers still in their seats. And the next thing I know is that Gary, who was the other CSS, had managed, he was a pretty solid guy, had got his head out of the headlock, kind of spun the passenger around so that he was looking at me. The FSM who was in the other headlock turned around and ran as fast as they could down the opposite end of the aircraft, leaving us with with a probably half drunk or very drunk, aggressive passenger. And me and Gary then just managed to grab an arm each and literally throw him, like with our momentum of him having spun around. I grabbed an arm, he just got out of a headlock, grabbed the other arm, and literally just kind of threw him forward, and he literally pitched forward, like face down, boom. That was a good noise, into the galley floor, and we literally just sat on him. We literally sat on top of him, and meanwhile, the rest of the crew got like the leg restraints, arm restraints, and we literally then, I remember making a PA for volunteers, and some of these things just go out the window, like what you're taught. You just react in a situation, and he was
Hmm.
very stocky, very powerful, very aggressive, drunk male, really like thick set guy. He was Mancunian or Liverpudlian, because we found out who he was later. It made the Times newspaper, amongst others, I remember. But passengers came forward to sit on him, which I'm sure is in the manual. Do you know what I mean? And we had to move, and it typically, isn't it? It's always in the middle of the night and the early hours before the last service. Like we'd done the first service, it was in that lull when you're meant to be having a little bit of crew rest, maybe, and doing orange juice and water
Yeah.
rights. And we had to like pull him out by his feet, pull a cart out, shove him back by his feet, pull the cart out.
He's not stopping this service. I
He's
love it.
not in service. Um, and then my next recollection is the plane landing with him still in the back galley being sat on, and aircraft being met by police coming, coming down the back of the aircraft. All the passengers are like,
Yeah.
what's going on? And those at the front never know what's going on down the back, and vice versa a lot of the time, do they?
Yeah.
I just remember, and again, is what it is. But I just remember the police coming down. They'd obviously heard he punched one of the female cabin crew in the face, broken her nose, as we later found out. But kind of, I'm sure things have changed since, but not taking any shit. They literally just picked him up by the handcuffs and walked him off the plane, like suspended, like 4 feet off the ground, like that. and his wrists were like bleeding. Me and Gary had forgotten to like lock the
Oh
handcuff, so that
no.
every time he moved, they were like cutting into his wrists, and people might go, "Well, he got what he deserved." But
Wow.
I remember seeing the policeman like hoik him up like that, and thinking, "Oh, that's going to
Oops.
hurt." And then we later found out this guy who's in the paper was some kind of well-known, how shall I put it, criminal, I guess is the best way to phrase it, but was
Oh
part of the
no.
deal that took Wayne Rooney from Everton to Manchester United. He was like, as Wayne Rooney was a 16-year-old at the time, and I think, some of the crowds that he might have known from his upbringing, on the estates at Toxteth, etc., had somehow intertwined themselves into this, football transfer. And yeah, I remember reading it in the paper, and like me and Gary, like going, "Oh my god, what if he finds out where we live?"
Well, yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah, you have to watch your back for a little bit, right?
Yeah, and that was, I reckon that was probably around, when's that? Probably, I don't know, late 90s, early noughties. Yeah, late 90s, I reckon, or about 2000, something like that.
So you were in the sort of early days of Virgin from like when they were like 10 years old till 25, I want to say. But
Yeah.
did you go to any of the infamous parties at Richard's house?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Have you got any stories about that you want to share, or do you not want
There's
to share them?
definitely a few I can't share. There's definitely a
Because
room.
basically, for people that don't know, in the good old days of Virgin, old Richard would invite everyone round to his house once a year for a little festival style party. We'd all
Yeah.
camp in his back garden, and there was bands, and yeah, it was fun.
It was amazing. Yeah, I went to a few of them. That was Kidlington in Oxfordshire. I remember. I went to it. I can remember 3. There might probably more that I've forgotten about, but I remember those really well. I have got a funny story actually. One of that I just remembered actually, but I've definitely got a really good room party story that I can't talk about until my
Oh
autobiography comes out in
man.
the future with Richard. And I can remember a really good party in Joburg for the launch of Virgin Cola, which is interesting because it was one of his businesses that didn't work because he was squeezed out
Mm.
by Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Because if you read the history, it was basically they colluded with the supermarket, well, told the supermarkets to take Virgin Cola off the shelves of the supermarket so no one could actually buy it, so you could never get any market share.
Wow.
But we had the most insane party for the launch of that in Joburg that ended up complete carnage, bodies everywhere, people, being ill, all sorts of shenanigans going on. And I remember the bus we were on that bussed us back to the hotel blew up on the way home, but it blew up and broke down outside a jail. So And there's photos. Someone shared these on Facebook not that many years ago. And I remember looking at them and people messaging me going, "Do you remember that?" And I was like, "I do remember that." And there's literally a fence, and there's faces pressed up against the fence like this, looking through at us lot. And there's literally, scantily clad females falling out of the bus onto the grass outside
Start a riot.
the everyone's half cut, and there's like convicts looking at us through the bars, literally just separated by a bit of wire mesh, and this bus is just like burning away. The engines are smoke coming from it. No idea how we got home. I have no recollection of that or the flight back, but that was probably that was like top three parties of all time. And then I'll always remember the first party I went to with Richard's house because I took my brother, because I remember he wandered off, and it was the night of Frank Bruno fighting. I'm pretty sure it was Frank Bruno fighting Lennox Lewis in Cardiff that was on TV. And I remember that because before I started with Virgin, it was very early days in Virgin. I'd left the BBC, where I'd gone from uni to BBC, and I was doing that part time before I joined Virgin. And my first ever interview was with Lennox Lewis and Frank Bruno for this fight. So maybe this was the rematch, or maybe it was. Anyway, irrelevant. But my brother somehow gets his way into Richard's house, either puts the TV on or just sits himself down in front of the TV and changes the channel to watch the boxing. And when he tells me that afterwards, I was like, "What do you mean you went into his house to watch the boxing? What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Yeah, I went into this house over there, past all those tents over there, and I put the boxing on. And then this lady said, 'Can I make you a sandwich?' So he was like, 'Brilliant, yeah, I'm starving, I'd love a sandwich.' And he goes, and this dude comes in with a beard and just goes, 'Oh, can you just switch the TV off before you go to bed?' And I was like, 'Oh my God, that must have been Richard and Joan, his bloody wife. And you're there alone in their house, you idiot.'"
But they didn't kick him out,
He
so I
didn't.
feel like that's an invitation.
It made him very, very welcome by the sound of it. I've never invited him
Yeah,
again, but
that's so funny. Yeah, my memories of the parties at Richard's were mainly just tense and severe dehydration because
10th,
we just
Waterloo.
drank so much.
Yeah.
And for some reason they would invite like gold card holders, wouldn't they? They'd invite like the top passengers. I'm like, you're
Why?
asking for trouble there.
Yeah.
You're mixing cabin crew and
Well,
the top flyer. Maybe they loved it. Maybe that's why they flew. I
yeah.
don't know.
And then I remember the last one, going to the last one I went to, and it didn't work at all because they'd invited people from all the different Virgin companies as well. So there was, Virgin Media, Virgin whatever, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Yeah, we were a special brand. Not that we were any better, but I think the Virgin Atlantic people were very different from like the Virgin Money people and all of that because we're a bit crazy and we'd fly around the world drinking in different bars for a living. So it's a
Yeah.
different breed of people, and we probably scared a lot of the poor old Virgin credit card
I
phone
also,
calls.
I also think it's the same, isn't it, with any business that they definitely had their own very specific recruitment policy in
Yeah,
place as well, and that obviously changed
yeah.
over the years because I think we talked about
Oh, for
this
sure. Yeah,
before on. It was something like 21 to 29, wasn't it? And you had to be a
yeah.
certain weight, or you got grounded until you lost that weight. And crazy,
Yeah.
absolutely
And it's
crazy.
just, I mean, it was 22 years ago that I had my interview, and I was weighed at my interview. That doesn't feel that long ago to me, but
No,
a bit older. But
no.
I don't think like 2002 doesn't sound that long ago. That to be weighed as a woman for a job is just kind of and made to put on the uniform to make sure that you look okay. And
It's
yeah,
unbelievable to think that now. Unbelievable. And I
yeah,
remember, I can't remember if I was weighed, I must have been, but I remember seeing one of the girls getting on the scales next to me. So whether I'd just come off the scales or something, I don't know. But just
yeah.
remember, it was what it was. But now, in the climate that we're in, to think that that was a thing.
Yeah. Well, women weren't allowed to wear trousers until very recently. I left
Yeah.
in 2016 and wasn't allowed to wear trousers then, and that wasn't that long ago. So,
Wow. No,
yeah.
no.
So there's been a lot of change in the last 5 years or so for rights, and I think people forget that it wasn't always like that. But
No, not at all.
What are you going to do? Do you remember because we had to wear skirts for everything, including, all the dangerous stuff. And I remember the one thing I remember from if you had to restrain a passenger, for the girls, you had to hitch your skirt up so that it didn't get in the way. You had to hitch your skirt up and then get in the fighting position.
That's hilarious.
put your put
Catwoman.
your arms out. Do you
Arr.
remember that? Arms out to
Yeah,
protect yourself and then grab the arm. Oh gosh, yeah, I remember all that.
yeah.
I'm
That
glad I
that
didn't have to
went
do it.
all out the window when we had our restraint. That's for sure.
There's no way in a restraint situation that you've got time to brief. You haven't even got time to get the kit. You've just got to hitch your skirt up and go for it.
Yeah, and in our one, it was literally, and especially when you're faced with somebody who is aggressive, drunk, at altitude, which is the worst combination in the world, and is quite a unit anyway, and probably knows how to handle
Yeah.
themselves. But to get, both the other crew members are far bigger than me. The two guys that he got in a headlock, and I know one of them can, really handle himself and managed to get out
Yeah.
of it. But we literally just looked at each other and just went for his arms, and then as we're literally got his arms, everyone's falling forward, and it's just momentum, and then it's just like, what are we going to do? Sit on him?
Yeah.
Well,
That's well.
I
I
remember
love that
another
you got.
one. Oh my god, I got to share this one with you as well. This wasn't Washington. This was Miami. Coming back from Miami, I remember this guy because he said he was a polo player, and I just thought there was no way on God's earth that you're a polo player. But he ended up trying to climb the cabin. He was that high. He was trying to climb the wall of the cabin, like onto the wall, up onto the
Oh
roof,
wow,
like off his
Spider-Man.
dial. And then it told us before he got on the plane, he'd literally taken everything, coke, ecstasy, speed, you name it. He'd taken this cocktail of drugs, then started drinking, and was just off his dial. But he wasn't an aggressive drunk. He was just bizarre. And we ended up. He wasn't aggressive at all. He wasn't a threat. But I remember having to PA for a doctor and a nurse. I remember being senior upstairs on the upper deck. I think he was in premium. Having to PA for a doctor and nurse, getting a doctor, and administering. I think is it adrenaline? Gave him like adrenaline
Hmm.
to like calm him down. And I remember the doctor going, "This will knock a racehorse out." Didn't knock this guy out. He kept going. He kept going. We gave him another shot, and he still wouldn't. He was still going. So I was like, I know, let's get creative. This clearly isn't in the handbook either. But I locked him in the cupboard with all the luggage. When you get the upper class bag,
Oh yeah.
but then when you pull the thing across, stuck him in there for the flight.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's where I used to go for a cheeky nap every now and again.
I couldn't possibly comment on that, Ali. But he definitely had a nap. He,
Come
he
on.
calmed down in the end. He was quite happy in there.
It's like a parrot. He just needed a blanket put over him so he'd shut up.
I remember like giving a little bit of water and food through there, and a little conversation with him, and just kept him in there for the flight. It's hilarious.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of stupid stuff you do on planes, I'll admit something if you've got anything that you'd like to share as well. But did you ever do that thing on? We had an empty flight. Maybe you were just taking it somewhere. I think I did this from like Manchester to London. We'd landed in Manchester, dropped all the passengers off, then we had to take the empty aircraft back to London. And when you've got no passengers and no luggage, the aircraft is really light, and on takeoff it goes really steep. So, so what I've done with the crew before is you get a tray and you sit at the top of the aircraft, and then you race the crew down on, or safety cards. I think it might have been safety cards.
No, no, I
Trying to
did
go
it.
down on
So, yeah.
laminated safety cards. I'm banging my arms on the chairs as I go down.
That's
I
what
mean,
I
it
was going
would
to
be
say.
awful if.
That's what I remember is literally aircraft going like that, and me just going bosh straight into like an armrest on a Rowan economy, and literally being like impaled by a javelin.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are nice little flights.
Stupid stuff we used to do. Oh, it was fun though, wasn't it? This is what I mean. I feel like everyone now is you can lose your job very easily now. And I think back then it took a little bit more. We would do some silly things,
Yeah.
which gave us some great memories.
I remember when that
Um,
started coming in, though, in that they would have, and I've forgotten what rank they would be, but those cabin crew managers who would come aboard an aircraft and fly with the FSM to check them out, because that never used to happen
oh
way back
yeah,
when.
yeah.
And I can remember, people being then sacked for things like taking Hello magazine off the aircraft and bringing it out on the crew bus and reading it, or a Virgin pen,
Hmm.
let alone.
Or I remember muffin. Someone got sacked for a muffin, didn't they? They took a muffin off a passenger,
No.
a used passenger. It would have been thrown away,
Yeah,
but they didn't eat
exactly.
the muffin. They were like, "Oh, I'll have that for a snack for breakfast," and they got
I mean,
fired. And
yeah, I
it's
mean
just,
that's nothing when you think back to, and I can remember this, and they'll remain nameless because they're very well known in the Not Just Crew community, particularly. But I can remember them coming down to the pool in Miami, wheeling their Delsey behind them, flipping open the Delsey, and there were 3 bottles of white upper class wine, the 3 bottles of red upper class wine, champagne. Um, and a kid pack full of miniatures. And I just remember thinking,
amazing.
what have they got left on board the plane then, mate?
But do you remember? I remember getting off again in Japan in Narita and going down to the crew room, and somebody had taken the entire cheese trolley. They'd taken the whole cheese board,
Had
two
they?
massive. Yeah, they were
Oh,
like
man.
cheese party. We had
Oh.
cheese and wine. It was lovely, very sophisticated. Yeah, you can't do that now. Well, we were allowed to take two. Was it two
Yeah.
beers?
Or 2 miniatures, correct.
Or two miniatures off the flight?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I can always
Oh
remember
my
those
goodness,
miniatures were
in
good
the
when
good
we
old
used to
days.
go skiing at Big Bear, because I could always remember being on the lift and like having a Bailey's or a
Oh
brandy to
yeah.
warm you up while you're on the left.
Oh. Oh yeah, bus juice. In our newsletter, I always do a bus juice letter because I was always want a good one for having bus juice in the Caribbean.
That's a good
Getting your
phrase.
skirts really sticky by the time that you got there because it all splashed out of the plastic cups. Oh, those are the good old days.
They're really good memories, I have to say. As I said at the start, I would recommend it
Yeah.
for anyone. One of my daughters was just talking about, I just want to travel, and I was like, okay, and she's just turned 15, and I remember saying, and my wife saying the same, have you thought about joining an airline, when you finish
Hmm.
school? Because that's what mum and dad did. That's how we met on a flight to LA, and you could literally,
Yeah.
see the world. That was my, modus operandi for doing it. Get paid to
Hmm.
see the world, and it is a hell of a lifestyle. I mean,
Oh, it's
it's a lifestyle, not a
fantastic.
job, as we always used to say. And you don't have to do it forever. You can do it for as short
Mm.
or as long as you want, but it's addictive.
Yeah, it's very hard to leave once you get sucked in.
And of course, you
It's
won't have those ideas, because that's, I think, the danger. That's what would be difficult. Is like if we went back, you or I went back, then we would notice a massive difference. But if you're going at it and this is the first experience, it's anything in life, isn't it? If this is the first experience that you've ever had, then it is what it is. If it's brilliant, it's brilliant. And you can still see,
yeah.
on social media, people who've just joined with friends of mine, they're having an absolute blast because they don't know what it was like to have had a 5 night Miami, or a 5 night Cape Town, or a 3 night San
Yeah.
Francisco, and all these kinds of amazing trips that we did.
It's true. Yeah, they won't feel like they're missing out on
No,
anything because that's not what it is anymore. But
no,
I'm very glad that we did get to fly when we did and have those incredibly long, fun trips,
me
meeting
too.
people that you never would have met and getting up to shenanigans. It's like basically it was like having 14 years of college. What from what I guess like a university experience would be.
I
You learn a
always
lot,
said,
but you also do a lot of drinking.
yeah, I always said it was as close as being at uni, because again, you're kind of living in a bubble. A lot of things are done for you, like the
Yeah.
hotel. Your hotel room is booked. There's transportation to get you there. Here are your course materials, which is used to be an envelope full of money and a free drinks token. All
Yeah.
these things done for you. Even
Yeah.
the places on where to eat and drink, just get handed down generations and generation, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you all got to go to that certain diner, and you've all got to. Oh,
Yeah.
those were the days. I think I could probably chat to you for another couple of hours, and I'm sure you've got a lot more stories for me. I might have to
I'll remember even
reach
more.
out to you.
The longer we talk, the more I reckon that I'll remember. It's all in there
You've had a
somewhere.
lot of fun.
A lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. It was so good to chat to you, Alex. Thank you so much. And where can people find you now?
Easy to find me now at Alex Chisnall, but I'm in the podcasting space as well. I've got a podcast called Screw It, Just Do It that I've had for over 7 years, and I've got a podcast agency called Podpreneur, and we make podcasts for everybody from big brands to reality TV stars and everybody in between, and I love it, as I'm sure you're loving podcasting as well.
It's definitely my new favorite thing. Thanks, Alex. And thank you for listening to this episode of Confessions from the Cabin.